you want to do it in height order with the tallest people on the edge and the shortest people in the middle, that's also an excellent option. Give it just 2 seconds and make sure that our live stream's ready to go. We good? Awesome. Hi, welcome everyone. My name is Allie Katz. I am the program coordinator here at the Writers House. Want to thank a couple people real fast before this starts. Thank you to Michael and Heidi Brodsky for their generous support, and to Jessica, Al, Heidi, Andrew, and Sean, and Zach, and the Wexler team for making this all happen. I am so excited for this, and I think maybe you can hear it in the nervousness of my voice. Earlier this summer, Allison Delpino was working here as an intern, and said, could we possibly bring Liana Finck to campus? And I think I put my hand on her shoulder and said, yes, 1,000 times yes, which was embarrassing for everyone standing around us. It's like a weird moment. And so this has all come together. You can take a look around after the program and see all the art. Allison has made some really, really beautiful books. Liana's drawing on the cover and a layout of the images, price guides in there. We have books for sale in the back. Beautiful Passing for Human is for sale back there as well. Just want to introduce Allison, who is a sophomore here at the college at Penn. She wears a lot of hats here at the Writers House. She's a program assistant, a press assistant, Jacket 2 editorial assistant, a calendar designer, and also the curator of this show. And she will be interviewing Liana tonight. So let's give Allison a round of applause. And as you probably know, Liana Finck is a cartoonist whose work regularly appears in The New Yorker and on her very excellent Instagram feed. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Instagram, but you should probably follow her there. Her work really translates just amazing anxiety and pathos and bathos and all the other oses with amazing precision. And she does an amazing job both at everything from the gag comic to the book, which you should definitely buy and read, and it is beautiful. And she said she will sign after the event. So Liana's going to show some of her work, and then Allison is going to do an interview, and then we're going to have some time for questions, and then you can buy books, and then we'll have a reception, and there'll be wine and cheese and baked brie, and it will be great. So Liana and Allison, thank you.
Thanks so much, Allie. Thanks, everyone, for coming. I'm going to read a tiny bit of my book that just came out, which is called Passing for Human. Raise your hand if I'm speaking too softly. Okay. This book is a memoir it's kind of half about me and half about my mom, and it's all like vaguely true besides a fact that I added to reality, which is that all women are born with a living shadow, and the shadow's job is to guide you towards who you're supposed to be. And in this world, men don't need a shadow because no one's trying to push them away from being who they are supposed to be. And in this world, women tend to lose their shadows at some point between childhood and adulthood. And it's a book about how my mom lost her shadow, and about how I lost my shadow, and about how we want our shadows back. And a shadow it's a great thing, but it's also a very tricky thing to live with, because maybe the person you're supposed to be doesn't fit into the very rigid niche that society wants you to fit into, and sometimes it's easier for you to lose your shadow. And the book is specifically about what it means to be a woman and an artist, and there are a lot of issues about that I was thinking about art when it's not connected to career ambition in the exact way that we're used to, because I think it's drilled into men, or at least in the past, it was drilled into men that whatever whatever talent you have and whatever you bring to the world should be funneled into providing for your family and making a name for yourself and making money. And for women, it's more complicated. Like, we have a little bit of that. We also have, no, you should funnel it into your family and like into being a good wife and a good mother and into making beautiful socks or something. And so a lot of women who are artists like aren't seen by the whole world as artists. They're seen as, or in the past they weren't, and they were seen by a much smaller circle. And what do you do when you're a woman and an artist? How do you deal with that art? So the book is told in a series of first chapters. I keep starting over because I can't figure out what happened to my shadow. And it's kind of also a book about writer's block and lack of self-confidence when you keep trying to tell a story and you have to keep getting rid of what you started and trying again. So this is the very short, very first chapter. Can you all like kind of see what's happening, or is it too small and I should kind of describe it? Okay. In the first block, this is me, and I'm sitting with a man whose name is Mr. Neutral, and I say, "What are you drawing?" And he says, "You, I'm trying to capture the expression in your eyes. When I look at them, I want to be a better person. I think," and then he considers me with his signature worried eyebrow, "I think you're my soulmate." Our heroine's fears unarticulated, gnaw at her like rats. And then there's a picture of these two imaginary rats sitting on my shoulder, gnawing on me. "So," says Mr. Neutral, who is absent-mindedly turning his coffee into decaf because he is not only so magical, but he's also so boring. "What are you drawing?" And then I say, "It started as a picture of you, but I didn't get the nose right or the hair. And then I thought, maybe I can pretend I was just trying to draw an abstract shape, and voila," and then it's a scribble. "Don't take it personally. I'm always like this. I'm consumed by worry, and I can't decide which lines are the right lines, and whatever I was drawing becomes a scribble. When I watch you draw, I get a glimpse of what it would be like if I could still draw the way I did as a kid. If I'd met you when I was younger, I bet I wouldn't have stopped drawing, but I can feel it coming back. I'm so happy we've been spending time together." And then he scrapes his chair back and says, "So am I, Leola," which is my name. "I hope we can hang out again soon." And then he casts a vanishing ray, and the cafe disappears. And then I think, here we go again. "I'm sorry to be so blunt," I say, but, and then he says, "Darkness descend." "But we're a couple, right?" And he says, "Of course." And I say, "So why do you keep disappearing?" And he looks terrified and he hesitates. "I can't tell you that. All I can ask is that you have faith in me." And I say, "When will you come back? Will you come back?" And he says, "Oh, don't cry. Do you want a hug?" And I say, "Okay." And he says, "There. I'll see you around." And then I'm crying. And then I think to myself, sorry I overreacted. I really do have faith in you. On her way home, our heroine has a visit from the fears that gnaw. They're chewing on my shoulders again. And they say, "He's going to leave you, you know." And I say, "No, he isn't. He's just a little awkward." And they say, "You can believe whatever you want, but he's going to break your heart." And in a small voice, I say, "But how can I keep him?" And they say, "Ha, keep him? How can you, of all people, expect to keep anything? You couldn't even keep your own shadow." And I say, "So it's true. I remember wondering if I'd lost something when I was 13 or so. Was it my shadow?" And they say, "What do you mean, lost? Don't you remember? You drove her away long ago, and she will never come back." And then I'm running, and it says, blindly, "A drawer doesn't draw because she loves to draw. She doesn't draw because she draws well. She draws because once she lost something, and by drawing, she will find it again. And then this is like the prologue to explain why I start the first chapter.
That's so beautiful.
Thanks.
So I guess we can get right into it. Can anyone hear me? Oh.
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to ask is, just because I have sort of a vague sense from the internet that this book was kind of a long process. How long have you been working on Passing for Human?
I've been working on it for about 6 years, but I think it really shouldn't be a 6-year book. It should be, I think, a 1 or 2 year book. It took me so long to figure out what I was trying to say, and I'm very like rigorous editor of my own work, so I really did keep starting and stopping. And like while I was working on this, I also started doing New Yorker cartoons, and those kind of consumed me for a long time. And I don't know, but the process of trying to figure out what I wanted to write about is baked into this book, with all the starting and stopping and all the different tactics.
Yeah, it's definitely like as you go through, or at least as I was reading through it, you are aware of the story as much as you're aware of you writing it and drawing it, which is so cool. How do you feel now that it's out, like after that whole time? It came out and I felt so good. I felt so good right before it came out and right after it came out. I felt like this thing that I made wasn't just like a hallucination. I think when you're working on a book, you feel like it's kind of a hallucination, and you don't even want to let yourself work on it because you almost feel like you're giving into mental illness or something. It's this story that no one else sees and that you see, and I don't know, it's strange. It's strange that reality, like the whole point of being a person is to see what other people see and to work a job and believe all these truths that we've created that make civilization happen. Like, I don't know, like you go to the office, money is important, and then if you're making a story, you just like turn your back on all those collective stories and you're focusing on your own imaginary story, and it's terrifying. And then the book comes out and it's so wonderful, and the world's like, yeah, this story is real, like we totally get it. And now it's over, and I've been feeling so sad since like there was a big flourish when the book came out, and then it was gone, and now I have to start a new story, and I forgot that I was gonna have to do that. So in that sense of just no one seeing it for the entire time you're working on it, how was the process of sort of working on this very long project different from the process of a New Yorker cartoon, or even something like Instagram where it's immediate?
Yeah, it's really different. I think I started everything kind of simultaneously. This is my second book, but I started my first book around the time I started submitting New Yorker cartoons. Instagram came a bit later, but Instagram came more from frustration of not selling New Yorker cartoons at some point. I thought, like, I need my ideas to be seen by someone, even if it's just my 70 Instagram friends at the time. and it was really, really cathartic to be able to not have to go through through editors and stuff. But a book's kind of the opposite. Like you're not supposed to show it to anyone until you have something visible. And I think I don't know, I think the ideal is to really have an audience all along the way. When like the New Yorker, you show it to an editor once a week, and that's very calming. And I think I love that people see the Instagrams. I think I love the immediacy of showing it to people. I'm still getting used to working just for myself or for kind of imaginary audience with the book. It's a strange, lonely way to work, and it's not. I don't think it's how musicians work, like they work in a group, and it's not how TV writers work, they work in a writer's room. But there's something very profound and
and like zen about it, and I'm learning to love it.
So you were mentioning about the editing process and how you're so hard on yourself with the writer's block and the rats and everything. I'm curious with this really long project, just about the ratio of like how much of it is that you said cathartic Instagram spontaneity as opposed to like the structure of a narrative and having to account for that.
Yeah, I think right. So I think making a whole narrative is scary. It's like building a staircase out of nothing. I think an Instagram post is like putting one step down, and that's it, and that's easy. But when you're building a staircase, you have to believe the beginning of your story in order to go on to the next part, and it's just, you really have to believe in what you've already written to keep doing it. On the other hand, I think there's nothing like it. You can get lost in your own story, and it's like reading a book, but much slower and more consuming, and I think it's the most like healthy thing a person can do is make a story and get lost in it.
I think you really see that also in just like a lot of the visual elements, like the parts where the squares are very dark and you see every individual mark you made to make it that dark. I think you like see the labor, and that's like really beautiful.
Thanks. Yeah, that was a relic from when I went to art school, and we really believed in like working very hard on something that looks very simple, which I don't really believe in anymore. Mm-hmm. But it was also a statement about women's work, because this book is so much about art that women make, and it's supposed to look kind of like mindless, like very detailed work that women can do while they're doing other stuff, like watching kids, like darning socks and making baskets, and there's something kind of tragic about it. You're not using your mind, but on the other hand, it's beautiful, and there's something like religious and calm and lovely about it, and it's my favorite stuff to look at, I think.
So how do you balance, because cartoons I think are very like essential. They sort of tend to, you include what you need. How do you balance sort of the really calming beauty of something like working on something very detailed and the very essential nature of a cartoon?
I guess the details in this book are all just black areas that I colored it in. So I think I decided when I started the final version of this book that it was all going to be in the same very minimal style, and I wasn't going to try to draw like Rembrandt or anything. I was gonna do the bare minimum, kind of the way I do for Instagram, but I was going to put a ton of labor into the black spaces. So it did take me, like, I was able to fill my days, and that was good.
And I think that segues right into I wanted to ask about the shadows specifically. What drew you to that symbol of the shadow? I'm
trying to remember where it came from. I think it was just kind of a throwaway line in one of the chapters that I wrote as an essay, and that was the chapter about how I was a weird kid, and how like I tried so hard to stop being weird, and I kind of like sold my soul in order to fit in with other kids and have friends, and I sold my ability to draw. And I think just like as an afterthought at the end of writing that chapter, I like the punchline was that I lost my shadow. I'm not really sure. There were so many drafts, but I think that was the beginning of where the shadow came. I know it comes subconsciously from Peter Pan, which I love, and it comes from a Haruki Murakami book called Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World, where there are some mystical shadow characters that I really loved. And I haven't read a ton of Carl Jung shadow writing, but I really love Carl Jung, and I was struck by the fact that he writes about the shadow, so it comes a little bit from that too.
I think originally or somewhere along the way, Passing for Human its working title was Light and Shadow.
Yeah.
So what was that shift? What was that decision?
That was my editor's decision. I was working on a different project called Passing for Human, which was about a girl robot, and I still feel so bad that I can't use the title for that anymore, because it worked. She was trying to pass for human, but I also think I was working on that project as a way of figuring out what this project was about, and in a deep way, this project was about passing for human. The editor, I don't remember why. I know it's a more dynamic title. There's some algorithm for what makes a dynamic title that Light and Shadow is not, and that Passing for Human was. I think because there's a verb in it. But yeah, although, okay, if you look at the image on the cover, that comes from the words light and shadow, which I was pretty proud of, to call the sun light and the moon shadow, and have that visual crossing of wires. That I think that the title image, the cover image, worked better for the other title.
And they fit so well together. They look so happy with
each
other. And I just, looking at it today up in the arts, in the gallery, I noticed that they're tethered, which I hadn't noticed before. Yeah, that's in the book. There are these little interludes that are an adaptation of the Adam and Eve story or of the creation story of God making the light, the night and the day, and the birds and the fish, and finally with Adam and Eve, and it's about them leaving the Garden of Eden, and God is this kind of innocent female character with a magic wand, and at the end of when Adam and Eve leave the Garden of Eden, it's because they found out that it was just a stage set. So God's kind of more of just an egoless, childish playing person, and less of an angry father. Mm-hmm. It's also very funny.
Thanks.
Specifically, humor, I think, is something that, even though this memoir is so it's very heavy, and it's so full of rage and longing, it's very funny.
Thanks. I think I tried to inject that at the end. I think I found my funny. I liked funny when I was younger, and I think I kind of lost it in high school and college. Beware, guys. It's not the funniest time of life. I got very serious, and when I started this book, I was still in my serious and not funny phase, and I kind of found the funny midway while I was working on it, and I tried to push it back in, but it's not. I wish I could have done more, but I couldn't, because the book really already existed by the time I was starting to try.
I feel at least just in my experience, a lot of the work of yours that I've seen is like that. It employs humor to make a really sort of broader, deeper, kind of social criticism or point. Do you feel like humor is specifically capable of maybe conveying things that other devices aren't?
Yeah, I do. I still think I'm way too serious, and I really admire humor, and I think it's the most profound thing. But yeah, I do.
I just want to shift gears here a little bit to talk about, so this is your second graphic novel. I'm just curious as to how the experience of writing your first one, Untitled Brief, affected your work on Passing for Human.
Untitled Brief was named after an advice column, a Yiddish advice column from the first half of the 1900s that was very, very popular. It was published in the Forward newspaper, which was a socialist, a very fun, very smart, kind of accessible Yiddish socialist newspaper out of the Lower East Side. And it was a huge deal when there were such a huge influx of Jewish immigrants in the late 18 and early 1900s, and it dwindled as the immigration stopped, and as the immigrants got it very quickly adapted to the U.S. and stopped needing a Yiddish newspaper in the first place. Anyway, so the letters were really intense, and there was a lot of
intense dislocation and hunger and like, what should I do? I can't feed my children. Should I put them up for adoption? And they're like so horrible, but they manage to be like so adorable and so fun in the way that all advice columns are. And it's like they're really amazing. So I adapted some of those into a graphic novel, and it was really a kind of manageable project. I think I intentionally chose a manageable project for my first book. I think I wanted to tell more fictional, more personal stories, but I didn't know where to start, and I sensed that I would just spin off and not finish anything if I tried to do that right away. So I did this instead, and at the very end of that project, I brought in a kind of personal element where I had myself meeting the ghost of the newspaper editor who answered these letters, and it's like a kind of love story, and it's about wanting your culture, which for me is Jewish culture, and losing it with the past as you move forward in time, and you lose the language that your great grandparents spoke, and et cetera, and the past doesn't even want to stay with you. Like, this ghost has no interest in teaching me about the past. He's much more interested in the present, and he eventually leaves me. So I think that sense of loss and love and the past is what inspired this book. That was also the only part of that book that felt like really fun and immersive to write. So yeah, so this book really does come out of that book.
Yeah, I can definitely see that.
Thanks.
So you were working with this century-old advice column. You have an advice column, right? You write for The New Yorker from the perspective of your childhood dog.
Yeah, it's called Dear Pepper.
Yeah, I love it.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to ask you about basically the experience of writing an advice column, like having people ask you what they should do and how they should live their lives.
It's really, really fun. I wanted it to be an etiquette column, and like a very specific kind of etiquette column, like etiquette towards strangers in cities, like sidewalk walking and like door holding and stuff like that. But apparently no one cares. No one asked any questions about that at all. I think one person did once. So it became more of like my husband is cheating on me column, like they all are. And it's been great. It makes me feel really powerful, and I get a lot of really like touching personal messages on Instagram, and for some reason that has to do with being female, I guess, and also the internet, and also just like everyone emailing everyone and it being overwhelming. I don't really engage with strangers, and this is my one way of like really getting into it with strangers. It feels more private. And so I guess this is like, I want to do a lot more, and this is my one window for doing that thing that I want to do, but that is a little bit scary and overwhelming.
Yeah, I can only imagine. Your Instagram is so popular, and people could respond like instantly. Like
yeah, people I send fan mails all the time. Like I think everyone's just emailing everyone all the time.
So I was just wondering how. Well, I guess you just answered this question, how your Instagram, how that specific platform affects your relationship to your audience or the idea of an audience?
I feel so, it's such a it's a mixture. I feel like completely loved and seen when I get all these like lovely comments from people that are like range from good job to like here's my life story, and it's so it means so much to me. But then at the same time there's this huge amount of pressure to like engage, and I think that's not that it's terrifying. It's kind of like it's like you're home, and everyone feels this way with phones, but you're just always on call to like tell someone you're so sorry that their parents just died, or like you're never like people are like just like always falling in your lap with these huge things, and also you're always on call to be told horrible things like you're a horrible person. Like people you never know what very personal thing is going to come out of the blue at you. So it's so obviously so hard to know what to shut out and what to let in, and we're never going to learn.
So does that relationship affect your relationship with your own drawings? As in, like, does that ever play into what you choose to draw or post?
Yeah, I think so. I do. A lot of the interactions that I draw as people are really taking place online. I don't know. I also feel like we're all so much less aware of real people because we're getting all our real people through the phone, which isn't really real. So I noticed that I think a lot of the interactions with strangers that I draw about on Instagram, where someone just like walks into you and is scary, or like it's just a lot. I draw a lot about strangers not treating each other as people, and I think people don't treat each other as people because we don't see each other as people anymore because we all have phones. So I don't know. I guess I'm documenting a more diffuse world.
I definitely I like that you describe it as documenting, because I feel like your drawings they have this really wonderful quality where they're very pointed and subjective and very emotional ideas, but they're also really specific. Like they're like diagrams and like scientific in that way.
Yeah.
So do you see, or do you ever think of what you're drawing as like a kind of like a diagram of life?
Oh yeah, exactly. I think I'm trying to make sense of things, and I want to strip things down until the one part of the thing that is essential is there and the rest isn't there. And because of that, I think I miss out on a lot of the loveliness that artists get to have of like building something. I don't think I'm much of a builder of things, which is part of why I have trouble starting a new book. But yeah, I think stripping things down is what gives me joy.
That is it for what I wanted to know. Is there anything you would like to talk more about or just mention about your book?
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, that's such a huge, vague question.
I know, there always should be. I think I'm so close to the book that I can't really sum it up. And I wish I had gotten there in this month of doing PR, but I haven't. There's a dog in it.
So I think now would be a good time to open it up to audience questions. If anyone wants to ask Liana something about her book or Pepper. Or
We've got a mic here, so just raise your hand. We'll get to you.
Awesome. I'm wondering, like, sort of what was the path you took to come into this career? I know you mentioned you went to art school, and I know there's so many different disciplines you can fall into there. I'm at art school right now, and I'm sort of trying to find my path towards what I really want to do with that.
I had a really circuitous, like art school was kind of a what's it called? A tangent in a way. I think I didn't really know that there was a difference between cartooning and art when I was younger, but if I had known, I would have wanted to be a cartoonist rather than a fine artist. And I chose fine art because I think I sensed in high school that it was more like highbrow, whatever that means. And the art school I went to wasn't so keen on comics and cartoons, so I was trying to be a painter and make videos and all this stuff. And then I decided I was going to be a writer who draws, because that's really highbrow also. And then I applied for some grants after college, and I like landed on the term graphic novelist, and I thought I'd made it up. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna be this highbrow thing deserving of grants, and it's called a graphic novelist. And then I realized it was a thing, and then I think I at first I thought I was just pretending to be a graphic novelist because it was an easier way to describe this very unusual thing I wanted to be. But no, I am a graphic novelist, and I think the thing that makes me feel like part of the graphic novel world is the community. There's both cartoons and like all the different little subsets of comics and cartoons have really, really welcoming, really smart, really unpretentious communities, and there's a lot of stuff always going on. And I think as you get older, you don't do as much stuff. At least I don't. But when I was in my early and mid 20s, I went to a lot of lectures and made a lot of friends, and just like in the cartoon world, I'm not sure if the art world is like this, but in the cartoon and comics world, like the successful older people totally talk to the young people who haven't published anything yet, and it just feels like you lose that terror that like there's this huge wall between a nobody and a somebody, and I think that's essential.
What is the best advice you've ever given as Pepper?
I can't remember. I'm trying to remember. I can't remember. Well, people often, for some reason, people remember one where someone bought four pairs of pants at Target, and then the cashier only rang him up for like 2 of them, and he was asking whether he should go back and pay for the 2 other pants. And I said, no. I said, you didn't do it on purpose. I don't think the cashier is going to get in trouble. If the cashier was going to get in trouble, you should. There's a difference between a giant store and a person. And also, if this were like a store that wasn't a chain that was run by one person, you also should. I still don't think that was the right advice, but like I've gotten a lot of positive feedback from it.
Hi. Could you talk a little bit about what it's like to sustain a cartooning idiom over an entire 6-year book project or long-standing series of drawings in the same series? I think it must be a very specific kind of challenge for an artist.
Do you mean like to keep the style stable throughout a really long project?
Yeah, and to resist the effort to actually do something else as an artist.
Oh gosh, I have a horror of starting new things. I just feel like I'm like falling off a bridge. So that's what keeps me on one project. But I think that the style is tough. I really don't believe people are born with a style, and I think a style. I think you kind of choose your own style, and you can change your style. And I think the style lives in the medium you use. And I was using this thin gel pen from Muji and some printer paper, which are a match made in heaven. And I think this like wavery line style comes from that pen. And so I just decided to keep using this pen and this paper for this project. And I'd done a ton of different drafts of it with different pen and paper earlier on, and different size and everything was different. And I even did some drafts where this was going to be a prose novel. And but after I decided on this pen and paper, I went back and redid everything in these 2-inch boxes with this pen, with this paper, and it's really fun to redo something. So I guess that's why I did it all in the same style. I probably didn't really need to. It's really hard to find a new style, but I'm doing that right now, and I'm trying to enjoy it. I think it just takes a lot of faith that you'll figure it out, and then it's fun. But it is really hard. Like I try to have one style for my New Yorker cartoons and one kind of like mindset. I tried because I'm only like a little part of my mind is funny, and it's really hard to access that part of my mind when I've been doing something else over the course of a week. I think it's good to be in the same place when you work on one thing and then a different place when you work on another thing. I try to be funny on trains.
Do you draw on trains as
Yeah,
you're moving?
That's why I have a wiggly line.
There you go.
I was wondering how you decided on doing like New Yorker style gag cartoons, because it seemed like for a while, I mean, the New Yorker's never fallen out of fashion, but it's the one place really that publishes gag cartoons, and so it's like a weird, like it's a really specific goal to have. So how did you move from like graphic novels to being like, oh, this is what I want to do. I want to publish New Yorker cartoons?
I think I knew about the New Yorker before I loved graphic novels. I got the New Yorker when I was like a youngish person, and I loved Roz Chest, and I loved Sel Steinberg, and I loved William Steig. So I didn't exactly want to be like one of those very simple, direct gag cartoonists, but I did think that was the way to get in, and then I would be able to do something more sprawling later. And along the way, I fell in love with the gag cartoon format. When I was younger, the graphic novel world seemed a little scary to me. Like indie comics was so like blue hair and cool, and like that meant a different thing in the 90s. Like also there weren't a ton of women in it. Like people seem to stay up all night and dance a lot, which isn't my thing, and the New Yorker just seems a lot more like steady and like, I don't know, it's not, but yeah, I'm kind of proudly square, so I like the squareness of the New Yorker. But the graphic novel world, either I judged it wrong or it's changed a lot. Like there's it's a ton more women now, and seems a lot more welcoming and less scary.
I guess I just really love the rhetoric around the shadow and kind of that way of visualizing this sort of loss of self that women go through. But I am a new fan, so I apologize if I haven't gotten to the end of the book yet. So if you did answer it in the book, my apologies. But there's sort of this feeling that I often have that I think a lot of other women articulate too, about feeling to blame or like complicit in your own loss of who you really were. And I was wondering if I think there's a lot of attention to that happening, but how do you see the hope and like the lightness in that? I just wanted to hear a little bit more about sort of like the positive aspect of that as well.
Yeah, I just got chills. Yeah. I don't know. I think it's kind of tragic, but on the other hand, I think anyone of any gender is living a kind of lie. Like women are living a lie that they're just like they're behind the scenes, and men are living the lie that they're very important, and they're kind of equally bad. So I think a lot of like male artists and writers they go into it with the assumption that they're very important and interesting. At least maybe not right now, but like I hope not so much right now, but like someone of 20 years ago would have done that. And those books are not readable to me anymore, and to a lot of us anymore, and that's a great tragedy. So I think maybe the more aware you are, the harder it is to be anything or to make anything or to like think that you're valid, but like the more likely you are to be honest and to make something that will last.
Anyone else have any questions? Oh. So far, sorry. This is really fun.
So I like to write stories, and the thing that I struggle with most is like mapping out the plot of the story before I start. Do you map out your plot before you start? And what is your strategy? Because it's so difficult for me.
I know, that's what I struggle with too, completely. This book, I didn't at all. I just launched. I think the reason I kept starting over is that I would just launch into each chapter and be like, I'm writing from the first page to the last page. And then I would fail sometime around page 10, and then that would become a new chapter. Now, what I'm doing now is, I don't know what writers do. I hope it's easier for writers. I really don't think it is, but it's so hard for drawing. You don't know whether to start with words or pictures. Lately, I have my best luck dictating into my phone while I walk. I tell myself a story while I walk, and then I type it up, and then I cut it into boxes, and then I lay it out as boxes, and then that's when the really not fun part starts, because then I'm I'll go in and edit these boxes, and even with that I can tell the first quarter of or the fifth of a story that way, and then it kind of trails off, because I think you can't really finish a story till you have a really solid beginning. But I'll have a solid beginning, and then once the interesting thing happens, I'm uh-oh, now what? but then I'll take the beginning and put it into boxes and think, okay, so now I should draw it, and then I can make the next part when I'm done drawing it, and then I can't draw it, and then I'm okay, maybe I should speak the next part into my phone, and after I speak, and then I'll just make the whole story that way, and then I'll be able to draw it. But I can't. There's this impasse where I need to have the first part perfect before I can move on. But I can't perfect the first part till I know the whole thing. So that's the problem. I think I need we probably all need to just ask a lot of people what they do, and I read some essays about it, but they're all just so complicated. Zadie Smith wrote a really interesting essay about it at the beginning of her book of essays on writing, and John McPhee writes about it, and it's what? What are you doing? He makes he describes these very abstract shapes made of strips of paper that intertwine, and it's so weird. It's so weird. I don't know how people. I think maybe it just takes a lot of confidence and desire to please people and make people a story that they will like, and I don't have that. Yeah.
I have one more question, which is who would you suggest other people? Your work is a launching point. Who else should people be reading and experiencing and looking for?
I think I'll tell you one who feeds into me, and then I'll tell you what I love right now. Well, a book that I love that I always read over and over is 7 Gothic Tales by Isak Dinesen. Not all of them, some of them. There's something, she's just such a good storyteller. What I've been reading now are some comics artists. I love Kyler Roberts. I love Jessica Campbell. I love Eleanor Davis. Those are the new comics artists I've just discovered.
Awesome. Does anyone else?
Did you start out with the publisher before you started the novel, or did you have to pitch it?
I pitched it.
You pitched it?
Yeah. I decided. I sold my first book kind of midway through, and I felt that I relinquished the reins too early, and I decided to try to finish this book before I started pitching it, and I finished it, but it wasn't as coherent as it is now, and after I pitched it, I did end up working on it a lot. I found an editor who really wanted to work on it with me, which was amazing. All editors have very different styles from each other.
Okay, I'm sorry, I have another question. It's about actually cartoon editing, which, like editing prose, someone's highlighting something and making a note, and you delete it and you rewrite it or you don't. How does it work when you're editing, especially a long project? What does the editor say? How do you respond to an editor?
I think there's no standard way. I think a lot of comics just don't get edited a ton, and a lot of comics artists are very good at editing themselves. My editor comes from magazines, which apparently means that he prints everything out and uses a red pen to write on it, which is a great way to edit comics. Yeah, and that's kind of what I do when I edit myself. I print it out and I use a different pen to add and subtract things. And there's a lot of light box. Also, I'll trace a new draft on a light box over the old draft. So I think when I started this project, I was being very, very deliberate about wanting to imitate writing and be able to edit the way writers edit, as opposed to like making something the way a painter makes something, and not like, I wanted a simple thing that I could do over and over instead of a very complex thing that I did once.
I was wondering about like side jobs that you've had that are not art related, and about how that's affected how you make work.
I did a bunch of weird side jobs when I was younger, like, I don't know, retail, and like going to random people's houses and like doing whatever college students, like documenting their book collection or something. And after college, it was like right after the financial crash of 2008, so I didn't even think I could get a job if I wanted one. I actually wanted to work as a book cover designer, which is a very competitive field, but I decided that winning grants would be somehow like more plausible than getting a job. And it was. I won a grant. I won a Fulbright grant, which is a great thing to do after college. And after that, I won another grant that was called the 6 Points Fellowship for Emerging Jewish Artists, which doesn't exist anymore, I don't think. But it was wonderful, and that lasted 2 years, and that kind of got me through. And I've done a lot of freelance work, so I'm not like, I don't think of myself as someone who lives off her art. Well, I do. I live off my art, but a lot of my art is things that pay like a job. I'm not like making what I want to make and then selling it. I'm often commissioned to make things. When I was younger, I did a lot of design work and some typesetting, and I tried to do book covers when I could. I really love book covers. A little bit of illustration, which I think is kind of its own world, and I've tapered off with that. And now I've done some advertising work recently, which is great when you can get it. And what else? The New Yorker pays. I think that's most of where my income comes from. So that's like I'm so grateful to the New Yorker for like being a venue of like being paid like a normal person and being able to make art at the same time. But yeah, it's like everyone does different things. And you're always kind of changing your way of making money in this field.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and let's give one a round of applause. We have a reception. We have books for sale.